Hey everyone, it's the Diplomat, and we are on part 49 of the Chris Watts Discovery read-through. And in this part, we are going to go from page 1273 to 1308. We're going to cover a summary report by Coder of one of the interrogations with Chris, and specifically some of the back and forth between Chris and Ronnie. We'll also get into another interview with Trent that, though not entirely believable, is pretty interesting. And lastly, we'll go into a report regarding the truck driver Christopher. Notice we have so many repeat names in the story, and so we have another Chris, and that was the fellow who was working on the tanks that next day at Survey 319 when he bumped into Troy. So let's get into it. Okay, on this first page we have FBI Supplemental 18, written by Coder, report dated October 1st, 2018, and this just goes into some of the interview with Chris. This is mainly describing a little bit later when his dad's there and such, and also includes Tammy Lee. So Christopher Watts, date of birth May 16th, was interviewed at the FPD. Also present during the interview was CBI Special Agent Tammy Lee. After being advised of the identity of the interviewing agents and the nature of the interview, Chris provided the following information. And just a note here again, the below is an interview summary. It is not intended to be a verbatim account and does not memorialize all statements made during the interview. At the onset of the interview, Special Agent Coder of the FBI notified Chris that the interview would be recorded. Chris agreed to provide a statement. Chris repeated the information that was provided during a discussion with S.A. Coder on August 14, 2018, namely that his wife Shanann was traveling in Arizona for a business convention and returned to Frederick, Colorado at approximately 2 a.m. on Monday, August 13th. Shanann got home and got into bed with Watts upon returning home at 2 a.m. At 4 a.m., Chris woke up at his usually scheduled time and prepared to get breakfast and go to work. At 4:15, Chris went back to his bedroom and began a conversation with Shanann about their marriage, a potential divorce, and selling their house. Chris stated that the conversation was extremely emotional because they had 2 children and Shanann was pregnant with a 3rd child. Chris stated that the conversation ended with Shanann telling him that she was going to take the kids to a friend's house, but would return. Chris initially repeated his statement from August 14th, wherein he told S.A. Coder that he and Shanann discussed a potential divorce in the morning, and when they finished talking, Chris went to work. Chris stated that he was involved in an extramarital affair with a woman named the Mistress. He stated that he and Shanann spoke about marital issues, but he wasn't able to admit to her that he was involved sexually with her. Chris continued to state that, in quotes, did not do anything to those girls. At one point in the interview, Chris asked if he could speak to his father. Chris was aware that his father was in the building and asked if he could speak with his father. S.A. Coder and S.A. Lee allowed Chris's father to enter the room and talk with Chris. Chris's father was allowed to enter the room with Chris. Chris asked, in quotes, "Are you going to leave this in here or no?" as he motioned toward the handheld digital recorder that was sitting in front of him on the table. S.A. Coder told Chris that the recorder would be staying in the room, and Chris said okay. Chris's father sat down next to Chris, and they began talking. Chris told his father that he failed a polygraph test. Chris's father asked, "Is there any reason you shouldn't?" Chris's father asked if there was anything else you want to tell me? What's going on? Chris told his father, "I don't want to protect her. I don't know what else to say." Chris's father asked him, "Did she hurt them?" And Chris replied, "Yeah." Chris told his father, "I didn't hear anything. When I was downstairs, I came back up and they were gone." Chris's father said, "She freaked out of the separation," and then unintelligible. Huh? Chris stated, "She laid back down when I was downstairs. I heard a commotion upstairs, but I didn't think anything of it." Chris and his father continued to discuss. Chris stated that, "In her heart, I know she knew about the affair. She was just waiting for me to say something, and for me to deny it again, and she just lost it." S.A. Coder and S.A. Lee returned to the room and asked Chris if he would repeat the things that he said to his father. Chris stated that after he had his early morning conversation with Shanann, she knew what was going on with his affair. He continued to deny his affair and continued to tell her that he was at a Rockies game. Chris stated that he went downstairs and began to pack for work. He heard a couple of things upstairs, but didn't think anything of it. He went upstairs to talk to her again and saw on the monitor that Bella's covers were pulled off, and she was laying there. Chris stated that he freaked out and ran in and got on top of Shanann. He stated that Cece was blue. He said, "I did the same thing to her." Chris stated that he felt horrible for what he did to Shanann and for what she did to the kids. Chris stated that Shanann killed both girls by choking them, and he did the same to her. Chris provided information about the girls. He stated that Shanann was in a hole in the ground that he dug, and the girls were in an oil tank that he placed them in. Chris marked the burial site of Shanann on a map. Chris stated that he buried his wife in a t-shirt and underwear. The girls were put into the oil tank in their pajamas. Chris stated that he initially heard the commotion when he was downstairs and packing for work early in the morning. The sound didn't make him immediately go upstairs. He went upstairs and saw the baby monitor showing Bella's room. Bella was laying on her bed without covers. The video baby monitor cycled to show a shot of Cece's room, and that's when he saw Shanann on top of Cece, choking her, and that is when he went into the room and choked Shanann, thereby killing her. Chris stated that he came into the room and pulled Shanann off of Cece and choked her. He motioned his arms with a motion that he pulled her down from his right to his left and pushed her down and to the left and then choked her. S.A. Coder and S.A. Lee asked Chris if he was telling the truth, and he stated that he was. S.A. Coder and S.A. Lee asked for Chris to confirm that his wife killed the girls first and then he killed her. Chris stated that Shanann killed the girls and then he killed her. Chris stated that he put Shanann in the ground and the girls in the tank because that is where he was going that day and he didn't know what else to do. He stated that he didn't call 911 because he didn't know what else to do. For additional details related to the interview, refer to the audio-video recording maintained in the FPD case file. So certainly a lot that we can say about this specific report and what it's referencing, but Chris's story is just so incredibly unbelievable. If you saw your wife on top of your child, why would you freak out and think anything was wrong even? I know he stated at different times probably what he thought he saw, but you would just run in and know already what was going on and know that there was something dangerous just from a baby monitor. I've used baby monitors for a long time, and if I saw somebody, my spouse or someone like that over my child, I wouldn't necessarily think, oh my gosh, something's going wrong. If I could see that her hands were around their neck, sure, but it's just so unbelievable. His story, it really makes no sense. And then I notice also in this report, I don't know if this is because of the way Coder wrote it, but it seems like there's multiple stories as to whether he went in and got on top of her, went in, threw her down, and so on. And how he would be able to pick up so much information from just looking at a baby monitor is pretty suspect, because you really can't see that great in those, especially if someone's body's blocking or on top of something. So I don't buy that. I don't buy, he stated that he didn't call 911 because he didn't know what else to do. Hello, that's when you call 911, if you don't know what else to do. So it's just a load of horse shit, as Coder has so finely put it before. The next page is FBI Supplemental 19, which is Coder and report dated October 2nd, 2018 with Trent. And he was interviewed at Larimer County Sheriff's Office In addition to SA Coder, CBI Special Agent Tammy Lee was also present during the interview. Note, the below is an interview summary. It is not intended to be a verbatim account and does not memorialize all statements made during the interview. Trent stated that he met Chris Watts online in 2017. Trent was positive that he met Chris because of the recent media attention that Chris was getting after his wife and daughters were found dead. Trent was positive that he met Chris because of the recent media attention that Chris was getting after his wife and daughters were found dead. Trent stated that he met Chris on a social media app. The app included GPS location and was meant for helping people meet each other. Trent stated that Chris Watts reached out to him first with a message that said, in quotes, "Hey, how's your night going?" Trent stated that at that time he thinks he was able to tell where Watts was geographically located based on information that the app provided. Trent thought that Watts was in Loveland when he sent the message to Trent. Trent initially stated that he started a relationship with Watts, but then found out about his marriage and ended the relationship. Trent stated that he used to have pictures of Watts wearing a green camouflage shirt with a lamp in the background. Trent also stated that Watts listed himself as straight in his profile. Watts originally told Trent that he wasn't sure if he was straight or gay, but he did talk about having kids ages 2 and 4 years of age. Watts told Trent originally that he wasn't ready to be, in quotes, out and known to the public as a gay man. Trent stated that on their first meeting, both men knew why they were meeting and it was for the purpose of having sex. They met up in June of 2017 for the first time. Trent stated that the first time he met Watts, they had a sexual encounter. Trent described Watts as average build. Trent saw that Watts was wearing adhesive patches on his body and Watts described them to Trent. Watts and Trent talked a lot, and Trent knew that Watts liked hiking, camping, and movies. Trent described Watts as having tribal tattoos on his back and arms. Trent stated that Watts used dorky pickup lines with him. During their first meeting, Trent gave Watts an address and Watts came to the address in 25 minutes. At the time, Trent was living with friends near the I-25 freeway and Highway 34 interchange. Trent was staying with a friend named TJ at the time. Trent stated that Watts came to see him by driving a Ford F-250 truck. He stated that it was approximately a 2006 model. Watts was dressed in pajama-style clothing like sweatpants. Trent stated that Watts was very shy at first. Trent stated that during their first meeting, Watts and Trent performed oral sex on each other. After the sexual activity was over, Watts became panicked and left. Watts sent messages to Trent apologizing for leaving abruptly. Watts and Trent took a 2 to 3 week break from each other after that first meeting. In late July-August, Watts sent Trent another message. Watts wanted to meet up with Trent again, but Trent was in Wyoming. In the second week of August, Trent and Watts met again. Watts was driving a blue truck and he came to meet Trent at TJ's apartment again. Watts was wearing overalls, a sweater, t-shirt, and boots. During their second meeting, Watts was still shy. Trent thought that the meeting may have happened at 1:30 at night and possibly during the week. Watts was shy and could not give Trent eye contact. Watts was soft-spoken. Watts and Trent talked about Watts' daughters and his world. Watts told Trent that if he, Trent, ended up not being a psycho, he might be able to meet his daughters. They continued to talk and Trent told them about Trent's widow. Trent stated they did not have sex during their second meeting. 3 days after their second meeting, Watts came to Trent's apartment at TJ's address. They talked for 5 to 10 minutes. In approximately late August, September, Watts messaged Trent again. Watts told Trent that he was deleting the social media app they used to talk to each other and he wanted Trent's phone number. Trent gave Watts his phone number beginning in 719 area code. In September, Watts and Trent talked to each other using Trent's real telephone number. They met at TJ's apartment again, and Trent performed oral sex on Watts. Watts asked Trent for Xanax pills from Trent, and Trent declined to give Watts pills. In October, Trent and Watts talked, but did not meet up. Trent eventually met a man that would become his boyfriend, and he decided to move on from Watts because Watts was only interested in sex. In late November-December, Trent and Watts began to talk again. Near Thanksgiving time, Trent and Watts began talking again, and Trent remembers Watts talking about his father. Watts stated that his relationship with his dad was rough because his father called Watts a, in quotes, Nancy boy. In December, Trent got a text from Watts wishing Trent a Merry Christmas. On New Year's, Watts texted Trent and told him to be careful and get a designated driver and to be safe. After New Year's 2018, Trent and Watts met up again near the I-25 and Highway 34 interchange near an Ulta beauty supply store. They talked, and Watts tried to have sex, but Trent denied him. A few days later, Watts and Trent met again in a Buick LaCrosse sedan that was gunmetal silver and approximately a 2012 model. Watts had his daughters with him. He introduced his daughters to Trent and told his girls to introduce themselves to Trent. Trent stated that Celeste was the cutest little girl and, in quotes, melted my heart. Trent thought that Celeste was 2 to 3 years old at the time. Celeste had a sippy cup and was very bundled in the cold weather. Celeste asked for Baba, which Trent understood meant a pacifier. Trent heard Bella ask if she could sleep with, in quotes, you and mommy tonight. Trent understood this to mean that Watts was still with his wife. Trent asked Watts about his relationship, and Watts stated that he was in a loveless marriage and was the victim of emotional abuse. Trent felt at the time that Watts was only telling him lies that he thought Trent wanted to hear. Trent encouraged Watts to get help and live out and tell people that he was in fact a gay man. In February of 2018, Watts and Trent met again. Watts unleashed a lot of information about his wife and told Trent that he was tired. Watts had bags under his eyes, sweatpants, slippers, and stated that his wife treated him like he was dumb. Trent told Watts to leave his wife, and Watts retorted with a comment about Trent and his current boyfriend. Trent stated that after that conversation, Watts became, in quotes, shitty, and made remarks about Trent and his past. In March or April of 2018, Watts and Trent had another meeting. They talked for 20 minutes. They both performed oral sex on each other. They also had sex in the Buick car. Trent thought that it was approximately 11:30 p.m. and was in the Centera parking lot near Highway 34 and I-25. Trent remembered that Watts told him, in quotes, I'm going to go home and kiss my wife and she's going to taste you in my mouth. End quote. Trent was immediately mad at Watts for saying that. From that meeting onward until May, Watts kept texting Trent and apologizing for his comment about his wife tasting Trent. Watts also insinuated that he was trying to find a way to leave his wife, Shanann. Trent stated that he thought that he was using telephone number, it gives a number, with Watts until December of 2017. From that point on, Trent thought he might have used, and then it lists another number. Trent initially stated that the sex was consensual and not for money. Trent then stated that during one time they met, Watts gave Trent $60, but it was only in relation to a comment Trent made about having lost a debit cash card. Trent described Watts as having a regular build when they first met, and Watts had a tummy that wasn't hard. He stated that he remembered Watts having plaid gray and black boxer briefs underwear. He described Watts as somewhat hairy and had a happy trail from his belly button to his groin area. Watts talked about going on vacation to Washington, West Coast, Central America, Canada, and North Carolina. Watts liked to hike and go camping. Trent stated that Watts told him that his last year in college was around 2012 to 2013, and that he was now proud to be an oil rig worker. Watts told Trent that he had one homosexual experience in high school, but it was only once. Trent stated that he was less than 100% truthful during the earlier parts of the interview with S.A. Coder and S.A. Lee. He stated that he did in fact meet Watts for sex and that he was then paid for. He stated that he and Watts met for sex on multiple occasions and that Watts paid for sex on multiple occasions. Trent stated that Watts was physically violent during sex. On more than one occasion, Watts was physically aggressive with Trent and held him down as he had sex with Watts. Watts also held Trent down on his back and choked Trent's neck during intercourse to the point that Trent had to fight Watts off. For additional details of the interview, refer to the digital recording of the interview. So, clearly, Trent is hard to believe, especially coming back and saying that he was not fully truthful. So that kind of, for me anyway, puts his all of his interviews in high scrutiny. And perhaps some of this is true. Perhaps maybe they met once and Trent is over-exaggerating a number of other meetings for publicity. You never know. In today's world, just getting famous can make you rich and all that kind of stuff. So, I don't know. I don't necessarily believe this word for word. Did he know him? Perhaps. Perhaps they had a meeting or two. Perhaps they've never met. So, you can just take that for what it is. So, the following pages are Coder's notes regarding the interview with Trent, so we are just going to skip through those. That runs through page 1290, and then there's just a Coder attachment listed on page 1292. 1291 is missing. Then we get into Supplemental 78 from Detective Baumover. This is dated September 25th at 10:24 a.m. The following information was documented at the time it was gathered. The date of this report is not indicative of when the investigation occurred. So this occurred on August 17th. At approximately 1000 hours, I arrived at the McKee Medical Center in Loveland for the purposes of attending the autopsies of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste Watts. Refer to the coroner's sign-in sheet for a list of attendees. Prior to the scheduled autopsies, I requested from CBI agent in charge Kirby Lewis, a crime scene analyst, to also attend for the purposes of photography and evidence collection. Crime scene analyst Eric Bryant was assigned the task. Refer to his report for additional details. During the autopsy of Shanann Watts, the remains of a fetus was recovered and immediately stored in a cooled environment. Shortly thereafter, laboratory manager Aaron Koning arrived at the McKee Medical Center to take custody of the fetus and transport it directly to the CBI lab. I completed a handwritten cover letter and the RFLE, request for laboratory examination, form and provided the documents to Aaron. Subsequently to all 3 autopsies being performed, I took custody of the evidence collected by Bryant. It should be noted, a metal container storing Celeste's clothes was not transferred to me at that time. It was transferred from the McKee Medical Center to the FPD by Sergeant Ian Albert at a later time. While en route to the Frederick Police Department, I contacted Commander Egan to inform him several items requiring drying prior to be stored into evidence. Specifically, the items that needed to be dried were Shanann's clothes and a sheet placed inside the cadaver bag when her body was exhumed. Commander Egan arranged with Longmont Police the use of their evidence drying closets located within their police department. Upon my arrival at the FPD, I met with evidence technician Amanda Purcell to advise her of the perishable evidence items that needed immediate preservation. I also met with FPD Officer Perez, who was assigned to transport the evidence needing to be dried to the Longmont Police Department. Refer to his and FPD Officer Coonrod's reports for more details regarding the transportation and the drying process of this evidence. Nothing further, Detective Baumover. Okay, the next is Supplemental Report, FPD, also by Dave Baumover, September 25th, dated, and time is 3:45 p.m. This is an interview with Christopher John, that's the truck driver that was over at Anadarko. On August 16th, 2018, while at Servi 319 oil tank site, I spoke with vacuum truck driver Chris. Chris works for Complete Energy Services, Inc., and was on site to vacuum the crude oil from the catch pan the east oil tank was drained into. I'm actually going to call him Christopher. I asked Christopher about the oil well site process and what prompts him to respond to a specific oil well site. Christopher explained Complete Energy Services is contracted by Anadarko Petroleum to remove the oil and or water from the oil tanks and separators located at many oil well sites. I asked Christopher how often he was called in to drain the tanks at Survey 319. He said it is not a high-producing oil well, so it's not as often as most others. Chris said the last time he was at Survey 319 was on August 14th at approximately 2 p.m. to vacuum the pit, which is a tank to contain the water separated from the crude oil. I asked Christopher if he noticed anything different or unusual at that time. Christopher said an Anadarko operator arrived at the site shortly after he did and parked east of the oil pump head. Christopher said that was unusual because he had never seen anyone park that far away from the tank area. It should be noted the area Christopher described is also adjacent and near the area where Shanann's body was recovered. Christopher said he didn't recognize the person but was convinced he was an Anadarko employee because he was driving a dark full-size pickup consistent with Anadarko trucks. Christopher said he spoke with the man who told him he was looking for a wrench he lost from leaving it on his rear bumper or tailgate, and to check on things. I asked Christopher if he was able to get the man's name. Christopher said he did not, but that the man signed his electronic JSA form. When asked, Christopher explained a JSA form is a job safety analysis document he completes for each site he works at. When an Anadarko employee is also present at a job site, he requests they sign the electronic form. Christopher said once his JSA form was signed, he went back to vacuuming the holding tank, and the unidentified Anadarko employee drove off. I asked Christopher if he would be able to get a copy of the JSA form for that specific visit. He said he likely could, and shortly thereafter informed me it was available and could be emailed to me. After I provided my email address to Christopher, I received an email from Brett from Complete Energy Services at 11:19 with the associated JSA form attached. I opened the attachment and observed two typed names with signatures below them. The first was Christopher's name and signature, and the second was Troy's name and signature. I contacted Commander Egan and informed him of what I had learned and requested someone contact and interview Troy about his presence at the Survey 319 site on August 14th. At 11:21 hours, I forwarded via email to Commander Egan the JSA form I was provided via email. Nothing further, Detective Dave Baumhover. Okay, the next page is just some notes regarding that last report, which we'll skip through. Then you have the license of Christopher shown on a page, and then following that is the email from Detective Baumhover to Dave Egan with the JSA form. The next is the JSA form regarding the Christopher being at Survey 319. So it's again a job safety analysis. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but it's, if you want to come back and visit it, it's on $12.99. But it explains, just different protective gear that he has to wear and different mitigating controls they put in place to protect him from the tanks, the type of hazards, toxins, and things like that. But this at least confirms that he was there and ran into Troy, as you see both of their signatures here at the bottom as well. The next page, Supplemental 80, is Amanda Purcell on September 26th, and this supplemental report was generated solely for the purpose of generating item numbers for another batch of CDs to be given to DA investigator Kathy Holscher. This batch of CDs contained a total of 28 discs, nothing further. On the next page, we go to a Dacono Police Department report, and this is dated on August 14th. And this is with regards to them visiting 2825 Saratoga Trail, which is the Watts residence. And this is just some of their narratives. This first supplemental is written by Agent Kyle Cooksey, and it was written on September 21st. On September 21st, I, Officer Cooksey, was working my assigned shift with the Dacono Police Department. At about 9:06 p.m., I assisted the FPD with searching the residence located at 2825 Saratoga. The residence was searched due to circumstances reported to the FPD about a possible trespass or burglary with a person still inside. Nobody was found inside the house. Reference FPD Department Supplemental for further information. My interactions were recorded by Axon body-worn camera. No additional information at this time. The next piece is written by Agent Lorraine Fratelli on September 23rd. At 9:47 on Friday, September 21st, I, Officer Fratelli, responded to 2825 Saratoga to assist on the clearance of a residence in which neighbors saw a person drive up in a car, get out, and walk up to the house. The caller further advised the lights were on inside the garage. Investigation. At the scene, I met with FPD Sergeant Manley along with Dacono Officer Cooksey and FPD Officer Perez and Officer Lines. Sergeant Manley instructed us on our approach and the teamwork required upon entry and search of the residence. Inside the residence, I assisted by providing cover along walls and hallways. I also assisted in clearing rooms on the main levels and upstairs. I noted the home was clean and orderly. I did not see anything out of order. I did hear an activated audible alarm upon our entry and during our clearance of the residence. During our search of the residence, we turned on lights and opened doors, looked under beds, and searched closets. Upon completing our search, we closed doors and turned off the lights. The residence was secured at 9:24, and there was no persons inside. Next page is Weld County Office of District Attorney, and this is dated as September 12th, 2018. And then it says when reported, September 12th at 8:18 a.m. This is Officer Dan Boyle. So this says list miscellaneous documents included with the supplemental report, and it says jail log report. So this is regarding Chris in jail. And again, this is September 21st, and it is at 2:40 p.m. it says. And here is the narrative. On September 21st, I received Watts's jail log reports from Nicole Morrill, involving dates August 16th through September 20th. These reports are initiated by jail deputies on a daily basis, and they document their observations and interactions with inmate Watts. The reports consistently reflect Watts as very polite and compliant. Watts reads his Bible and did receive additional reading material, namely, in quotes, the body of evidence. End of report. And that's where we're going to end this part. If you are curious, the body of evidence is a story about an older man who apparently who died from erotic asphyxiation. So, and the suspect is the woman who had sex with him, who's played by, I guess, Madonna in the movie. But just interesting in case you're wondering what that book is that Chris also had in his cell. It is a book about murder, but murder during sex. So thank you so much for listening. This was just one quick taste of the jail log reports that are to come. There are a number of reports that we're going to go through that detail Chris's time that he spent in jail up until this point, and just descriptions about what he's doing and his demeanor and so forth. So we'll get into that in part 50. I want to continue to send prayers to the Rusek family and all involved in this horrific crime. We pray that you are finding help, talking through things, and we just pray for your strength and your peace. In the loving memory of Shanann, Bella, Cece, and Nico, this is The Diplomat. Have a great day.